be getting $1,000 for computer supplies. So everybody is a winner.
Everybody really is a winner. And to help you along this journey, for those of you not so familiar with Valorant, we're going to give you some quick points so that we can help guide you through this journey. Starting off, it's an attack and defense game. So let's start off with the offense. It's going to revolve around planting and protecting the spike to make sure that defenders aren't able to defuse. You're going to play agents that are able to gather information on where defenders might be playing across the map. You're going to use utility, things like flashes, drones, as well as ultimate abilities that are going to allow you to enter site and counter your opponent's abilities a little more easily. This is going to also mean that you're split amongst different points of the map so that the defenders have to watch more angles and keeps you being unpredictable. This is going to also rely on communication for each of these teams. You're going to need to communicate where you see enemy players, where they could potentially be located, and utilize those pieces of utility together.
Now we have the defense, the opposition to the attackers, who are responsible for protecting all sites that they have. Some maps 2, other maps 3, the attackers will try to plant the spike on. They're going to be using their abilities to slow down the attackers from their push or outright deny the site entirely. And of course, if they lose a teammate, they find a teammate eliminated, they need to do what's called a trade, which is to swing out and fight their enemies to keep the player scores even. And of course, as the defenders, they get to hide around spots on the sites to catch the attackers by surprise. Last but not least, they should be playing agents like Sage and Cypher, known to be part of the Sentinels class, to slow down the attackers.
All right, and with that, you've got a quick rundown of the game, and if that was a little bit much for you, that's okay. Ashkan and I are here for a reason, and we will be keeping you appraised of which one of these teams is doing well, what parts they're doing well with, and who is in the lead here as we get ready to go down into map number 1 of our series, Bind.
Now, Bind's a really interesting map because it has 2 teleporters inside of it where players get to get creative with their utility that their characters have, throw them through those teleporters, and make havoc across the map from their initial position.
And as you mentioned, it is also going to matter a lot for what agents they pick. And speaking of that, let's go right down into Agent Select. Take a look at what both of these teams are going to be working with and how that is going to shake things up. We took a quick peek at that, and we will have a lot more time to break down the agents that were selected and what you can expect to see once we go into this game. And going back to what Ashkan was mentioning with those teleporters, movement is going to be so important. And once movement ends up being a huge part of a map, communication ends up being that much more key. You have to make sure that you're not only communicating with your team where you're going at any point in time, but you're also trying to make sure that you're communicating as the enemy team to be like, hey, you just heard that sound, make sure that we have somebody watching where that angle is going to be kind of being swung on, and make sure that you're able to kind of cover all of your bases and all of your corners as the defensive side as well.
Now, I want to point out something, Becky, since this is a best 2 out of 3 series with a variety of maps. Each map kind of has its own unique identity and therefore a unique problem for both the attackers and defenders to solve. So these players, as they sort of construct what we call the team composition, which is the selection of characters, that is their answer to the problem that each map poses.
Beautifully said. And as we can see, already Having Fun has set up a great set of Sentinel utility and is going to be slowing down the attacking side of one-tappers from being able to quickly move onto this side, is able to get a 1-for-1 trade there before going down. As we see, the attackers also have managed to get the spike planted, and now the ball has moved into the defender's court.
Now in the perspective of Crisis, with the Ghost in hand, trying to find anybody to eliminate. Good for one, turns around but is swarmed by enemies. This leaves Rose, aka Ashton, all alone on the map.
Yeah, this is kind of a sticky situation. As you can tell, that wall is going to be going up and down, and it's going to be blocking off a lot of lines of sight. Wuzu does have an advantage here, as Rose, unfortunately, is forced to try and go for that defuse. And once you're making those defuse actions, you're kind of a sitting duck. You're really just trying to hope that nobody is going to peek around those corners and stop you from going for those defuses. And unfortunately for Rose, does get stopped by Wuzu, so one-tappers are going to start off with a point to their side. This this is going to be a 1st to 13 map as well. So we'll be kind of walking you through who is winning as far as the numbers are concerned. But if you're ever kind of questioning who is on top here, you can always take a look up at those numbers at the top of the screen.
That is both for the round score, the lower set of numbers, and the series score, the top set of numbers. But man, these players not even giving me the time to speak. That's going to be Evan finding that first opening elimination to make space on the map for their team. Now the defenders are spread thin. With less players, they have less ground that is visible and under their control.
Once again, utilizing the wall from one of those characters to block off a lot of lines of sight, drop it at a time where the defenders are not anticipating it, and that's going to mean that a Flawless is able to come through. A lot of damage dealt to One-Tappers, but nobody going down in that one.
Now, One-Tappers take a 2-0 lead, but that's not something unusual in the game of Valorant. We have what we call a credit economy, which is what enables players to buy their tools each round. So winning that first round usually enables you to win the second in a row, and it is this third round which is an opportunity for Team CNB to really bring it back.
And we'll see if CNB is going to be able to bring it back now that they should have the better buy-up going into this round. But it is also going to heavily rely on the pieces of utility as a decoy gets thrown out that is going to allow for Alpha to gain a little bit of information, but is taking some heavy fire from both that little robot as well as one of those players hiding out in the corners, doing what defenders should be doing, and just trying to see if we can get these trades back and forth between these players as Crisis with some nice peaks is able to find 2 before going down.
And with the Guardian going tick-tack-tap, that's going to be the One-Tappers. Now, Evan, good for 1.
Ooh, we're very split up between the 2 attackers here, but Having Fun is going to be able to make some moves across the map. The setup, actually, of the camera is going to be rather instrumental, unfortunately, for Having Fun. Humberto does evade that tripwire. And this is a situation where Having Fun should be really relying on trying to get this first one, getting about halfway on this defuse, and then looking for that next player. And I mean, signed, sealed, delivered. If you're able to do it just as we write it up, the clutch is going to come through, and CNB will find themselves with a point on the map.
Truth be told, Becky, I think you're somewhat of a psychic.
I mean, I feel like I am after that one.
The perfect play in that clutch scenario, and as we said, I guess I'm something of a psychic myself. Team CNB taking back that round with the tool set. So you and I, we're 1 for 1.
We are, and as you can see on our little scoreboard there, as well as highlighted in yellow at those player portraits at the very top, are going to be the characters with ultimates ready to go. You're going to accumulate points that allow you to get an ultimate at certain points in the game, and they're going to be extra strong abilities that usually can help turn the tide of a round that maybe isn't going in your favor. And each character has their own unique ultimate ability, not to mention their own unique abilities, but there is some overlap between those as well.
We're watching a lot of space being controlled by Team One-Tappers in B long. It looks like they want to drive an all-out attack towards the B site, but it could be a fake. We see a first teleport go through, or hear one. A flash. Ooh. And another teleport as well. Having Fun. Turning around, fully aware of exactly what's going on. Rose, good for 1 on their own as well. 2 versus 2.
Ooh, 1v2 now. A quick turn of the tide between those remaining One-Tappers players. Unfortunately for Rose, a lot of those players on the opposing side, full health bars with only 5 remaining for Rose here. Is going to try and just make as many of these isolations as possible. Successfully able to take down Humber Weiwei. And now is just waiting to see if this turret is able to gather a little bit of extra information here and try and play off of that contact as much as possible. But you can see that Evan trying to do the same thing here.
Oh, you can actually hear the sound of that drop down.
Oh, the peak in the wide swing almost comes through from Rose, but Evan's going to be able to get 3 eliminations in that round and 3 points for the side of One-Tappers. Every single one of these rounds, though, is actually coming down to the wire. You I mean, we saw one flawless round already, but every single round, aside from that second one, has actually been extremely close, which I think is really speaking to the skill level that both of these teams have and are bringing to the table.
Oh yeah, they're keeping it head-to-head. Neither team wants to give in too easily. It is the grand finals after all, and both of these teams were so dominant in the league throughout the regular season. Again, each team playing against each other team. And so Team CNB, Team One Tappers kind of determined as the two top dogs. Now finally being able to determine here in the finals who will be labeled the best.
All right, we got to see one ultimate come out there as well from the Sova, trying to shoot a giant bow and arrow that is going to deal damage as well as reveal enemies if it is able to tag them up. Unfortunately, it is not able to, and instead of standing there like a sitting duck, is just going to go ahead and join up with the rest of the team and make a rotation here. This is a pretty common thing that you see happen in Valorant games where teams decide, okay, there's a little bit too much defensive force happening on this side, so we're going to go see if we can have a little bit more success on the other side of the board. And it's a little bit of a chasing cat and mouse situation in that regard. Very nice shot there from Evan. Very long range and taking out that defensive player. That does mean that those tripwires will no longer be active, so it's a lot easier to get onto the site for One Tappers now.
But with that teleporter the defenders use it long, they actually get behind Team One Tappers who are trying to plant the spike. That results in Alpha all alone now in a 1 versus 3. They use a teleport on their character, Yoru, to get out of a sticky situation, but they still need to find the spike and plant it within 14 seconds. It's a tall ask, Becky, and they weren't able to see it through.
Yeah, that is indeed a difficult situation. So in this game, you are going to have a physical object that your character is going to carry around that you're then trying to plant on one of the two different sites in the form of the spike. And if the character that is carrying that gets taken down, then that physical object is going to drop and one of the other characters has to go and retrieve it by moving on top of it. Unfortunately for Alpha, though, not able to make that happen, not able to follow that up by getting any more eliminations, and thus that round got taken over by CNB with a very nice set of defensive maneuvers there. So honestly, a very good one that started out feeling like One Tappers were really setting the pace, but CNB were able to do some really great communicating that brought them back in that round.
You see that dart flying through the sky. That is Sova's recon dart, which reveals anyone who is within its line of sight. And for Evan, that's going to do a lot of good, which enables them to heal after they get an elimination on their character of Reyna.
And I'm sure a lot of you are also wondering, what is this big old blob that was across the screen? A big old Viper ultimate called Viper's Pit. She basically takes over the entire space and makes it her own, and that does help out with Team One Tappers for being able to take control of that site and resulting in Evan being able to find these final few eliminations. I will point out also that the characters that you're typically going to see picking up a lot of eliminations or being in a lot of these back and forth fights are going to be characters like the Reyna and the Yoru, played by Alpha and Evan, just because they're characters that have a lot of kit built in, a lot of abilities built into their kit that allow them to duel against other characters a lot more easily.
Hence the name Duelists. That is the category that they all fall under. And each of these players are playing within the category of Duelist, Initiator, Controller, or Sentinel. We talked about how Sentinels hold space, Duelists fight for the space, Initiators gain info or help the Duelists, and Controllers use smokes to cut off lines of sight. And we're seeing that here as One Tappers struggle to push past the smoke into the site. It eventually dissipates, and now they can walk up and through, now planting the spike to enter the post-plant phase.
Oh, and already one-for-one trades back and forth. Those flying cabbages that you see across your screen are trying to locate members of the enemy team, and it helps out tremendously as Rose is able to peek out and find two players of One Tappers as a follow-up to those flying cabbages. The defuse is heard, but despite that, unfortunately, Wuzu is not armed for the occasion. It is having fun, who closes out the round. The defuse, of course, sends us to the next one. Looks like we may have
a near tie on our hands. Team CNB not letting this round differential exceed 1 or 2 at max.
Yeah, and honestly, the back and forth is very impressive to see between both of these teams. Usually at this point in a game, you would start to feel like who has a little bit more prowess, either on their characters or on a specific side of a map. This is a place also where I will highlight that CNB has 2 Sentinels, which is pretty abnormal as far as a lot of games of Valorant are concerned, but that's likely something that they picked up because they were starting on the defensive side, and you're always going to play more rounds, or you're more often to play more rounds of the side that you start out on. So you would kind of lean your team composition into a direction like that, as we see a Dimensional Drift come out from the Yoru that's going to allow for a lot of information to be gained about the whereabouts of this defensive side.
Oh, a nice crouch spray transfer by having fun to find 2 eliminations and keep the site on lock while also claiming the spike, and on top of it, the round crisis. Putting us towards round number 9. Becky, the score has evened up. We are at a tie, and we're about a quarter's way, 2/3 through the map.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, actually, this is going to be a place where one-tappers don't really have the amount of credits in their bank to be able to buy up at the same level that CNB are able to. So this is a round that is likely going to go into CNB's favor, and you can see those creds under that creds column, as well as the loadouts to follow up next to there. And you can usually tell bigger is typically going to be more expensive, is going to pack a little bit more of a punch. So if you're looking for a little, like, very simple guide to follow, the bigger the better is going to be the case there.
That turret is going to trigger, giving some information, but the teleport will be a fast rotate, having fun with a very daring teleport to follow through.
Yeah, absolutely daring, as Ashkan said, and just decides, hey, if you're going to try and go to the other site, I'm going to try and follow. Yapper is going to try and block off a lot of these lines of sight and really just try to make a little bit of a pincer maneuver with having fun.
Oh, we got a
great TP from Yapper allows for those final 2 players to get swept up, and a round that was already looking to be in CNB's favor is kind of solidified with some rather flashy gameplay there.
Walking through smokes is a kind of daring move of its own, so it looks like Team CNB is cementing their identity as the risk takers between the 2 teams. Walking through these smokes isn't something you usually see because you're not sure where the enemy will be placed when you walk out of that smoke, right? You don't want to do that if you don't have to. That being said, Yapper, hyper aware of what is going on and does it with confidence.
I was going to say there is also a little bit of an argument to be said that Yapper is the player creating a lot of those smokes, and typically if you do see somebody push past a lot of that vision denial utility, it is going to be the player who has the most control over it, which is the person who placed it a lot of the time. So we're getting to see a little bit of that up close and personal, and the side of one-tappers making a lot of rotations in each of these rounds and trying to see if they can maybe do a little bit of a trip onto CNB here.
A lot of noise being made in the area known as Hookah, as 2 of the attackers, one-tappers, are blinded by Owen's ability, Paranoia, having fun once again using that teleporter. And something tells me we're going to see reruns of this episode over and over again.
Yeah, Anurok actually decides to go through the teleporter as well. Evan was almost able to make, once again, a pincer maneuver with having fun there, but it does end up going the defensive side's way. And all of a sudden, we've really just kind of flip-flopped sides here, having fun, use that ultimate to try and gather last bits of information about the whereabouts of the now post-plant situated one-tappers. And now I think we get to see Wuzu just play some what we call lineups here, where you know where you have to aim your cursor to be able to place these damage-dealing abilities. Unfortunately, it is just narrowly off. And so Team CNB with red HP take that one down.
Definitely a nail-biter there, Becky. We were talking about lineups can be a huge tool for the post-plant phase for the attackers to deny a defusal by the defenders, where had that molly landed in the right place, it absolutely would have denied the round for Team CNB. But it does go in their favor this time around.
Yeah, and you can even see it happen real time there. Anurok just having to make that quick relocation to another spot where that damage isn't going through. And narrowly, in the nick of time, is able to keep it together. And Team CNB really showing up nicely. And I think, once again, it is kind of going into the strong favor of having this double Sentinel composition to start things off.
Opening pick by Evan, and then uses the dismiss to safely get away. Right now, as Reyna, they have their ultimate active, meaning every time they get an elimination, they have the option to go completely invisible.
And that allows you to also go for repositions. It also allows your character to heal. So it's extremely powerful if you're trying to get into a lot of these 1v1 and dueling situations, which you can see Evan ran head first right into. And so between those two, that ultimate as well as Wuzu's Viper Pit, we were able to get to this 5-6, and we are at the end of this first half. So if we get to a 6-6, that's an even half. That means that we could be in this for a very long haul. But as I mentioned, Team CNB really should hypothetically thrive on the defensive side, and I'm interested to see how they're going to play the attacking side, considering that having fun is one of those top eliminating players for the side of CNB.
I will say Team CNB, even though they have 2 Sentinels, kudos to one-tappers for taking their time and eliminating that Sentinel utility. You know, they're not really running into it. They're very much aware of what can be used to deny them the space, and so they're not going to be taking damage freely, instead showing a lot of patience.
And one-tappers do have an ultimate from Sage ready to go this round, which means that if one of those players does get eliminated, that Sage can go for a resurrection onto that player. The blinds come through. You can see them as those little balls of light on players' faces, and that means that they cannot see on their screens. And one-tappers falling rather prey to that, and that Sage going down before being able to use that ultimate ability as well.
Yeah, Sage's ultimate ability, Resurrection, able to bring another ally back to life, is huge. And to not be able to use it in this last round, it's a tough pill to swallow for Team One-Tappers. But still, we've seen them make magic happen. Reyna, Evan, on that Feast or Famine agent. Does have the opportunity to find one. They do use the dismiss to reposition and not to heal. A good option indeed. 1 versus 2 here, Becky. They need to still grab the spike, and there's only 15 seconds left.
Yeah, this is a really rough situation, actually, for Evan. You have to anticipate trying to jump up onto those boxes. You don't have a lot of accuracy when you're making those heavier motions, and so you're really, really not looking in such a great place when you're in a 1v2 situation. And now we're getting to see some replays from this first half, taking a peek, doing a little bit of a throwback Thursday here. Even though, I guess it's Tuesday. I should have said Throwback Tuesday. I don't know what day of the week it is. But as we go into this next half, 7-5, CNB are leading, and it is first to 13 here. And I'm interested, once again, to see CNB seem like they should have a team composition that struggles a little bit, but Crisis has been somebody who's really been able to perform rather well on that defensive side and is playing a character that should thrive more once moving to this attacking side.
I also really quickly want to point out that now that we've swapped sides, the economy, the credit economy I mentioned earlier, has reset. So both teams are on an even playing field.
Oh, a lot of utility being used to get past that Viper wall. And that just goes to show the strength of vision denial, the amount of pieces of utility that you have to expend to even get past it as the trades go back and forth here between these players. Those shots really struggling to finish anybody off, as Wuzu now is the only player remaining on that defensive side, but the long wraparound from Anurok is going to be more than enough, and CNB are going to increase their lead.
Team One-Tappers, even though now on the defense, took a strategy and a method of approach that made them seem like they were just still on the attacking side. They went for the flank, pushing out of their sights to get behind Team CNB who are going towards A. And that is an option. You don't have to stay on your site. There's no rule book or denial in the game that prevents you from pushing out. Totally an option to take what is called more map control, but it's not something that we usually see on the very first round.
Ooh, and a little bit of a gamble stack. A lot of players from One Tappers deciding to hang out towards this entry onto the B site, and that is going to cause a really early collision. I mean, I talked to both of these teams before tonight, and I was like, what's something you want to tell me about your team? And they both basically were like, we play aggressive, and we've had very few rounds go to time, and I think that goes to show just how aggressive both of these teams really are. Oh no, unfortunately Having Fun not prepared for that defensive player. Come from behind there as Rose is now the only attacker remaining, does have the spike in hand, but with 14 HP, it's looking a little bit rough. We can just try to play off of this little turret, but unfortunately the turret is not going to be able to see Evan hanging out in Heaven up there. Heaven is what we refer to as a lot of those higher angle areas where you can kind of see down across the rest of the map and get a longer vantage point.
Now, a lot of these, what we could say, call-outs in reference to certain spots on the map or how players refer to those spots to each other to communicate positions quickly and effectively. So Heaven is one such call-out. And A site, B site, we have the default plants on each site, which every player intrinsically understands as where the spike will usually go. Labeling schemes like that make communication swift and effective. Now we move into round 15, and Alpha's sitting in what is called U-Haul, waiting for anyone to walk in or teleport in.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Yapper does teleport right into the line of sight of Alphas. So One Tappers having a very nice defensive start to this round, and Having Fun is going to try and get a little bit of space across the other portions of the map. Unfortunately, that Cypher character is not the best at gaining space compared to some of the other ones, especially things like that Reyna that One Tapper still has in hand.
Right now, though, that camera in their back pocket could be used to gain a little bit of information. You are absolutely correct, Becky. I mean, Cypher is super limited on resources to make aggressive plays, but they can still gather some info. Regardless, it'll be that Killjoy, Rose, Ashton planting the spike over on B and Having Fun trying to find an elimination by lurking, completely denied.
Honestly, it was a great attempt, though. Like, you have to understand that when you're in a 2v3, you know that you're down on players. You know that you've got to try and get a little bit creative. And so I really liked the decision to just have Rose go to the other side of the map and just try to get as much time as possible, because the other players are going to have to worry about the rotation. They're going to have to worry about Having Fun going for that lurk. And so despite losing this round, I think that CNB actually made the most out of a bad situation that they possibly could.
Absolutely. Strategic approach to the round was superb, and that is what these team games are all about, is developing those tactics on the fly with everyone who's still with you. There it is one more time. Alpha finding a cheeky little pick at the beginning of this round, and Having Fun actually in that situation did land a tap, a dink as we call it, but didn't have the right tool to kind of finish the job, get the elimination they needed there.
Now One Tappers getting a lot closer to equalizing the score of this game here. Only 1 point away from being tied up with CNB, as we see Yapper go for a similar play to the previous round, and is going to get a little bit of vengeance there, taking out Alphas. And it is going to be a quick push from the side of CNB, who've been able to get the eliminations early on in this round and get that spike planted.
Wow. From a long line of sight, Having Fun getting an elimination on Evan. Wuzu and Blitz responding in kind. A 1 versus 3. All of a sudden, Wuzu left alone.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a spooky place, especially considering that that wall that has been so important. Optimal place here. And Rose is going to get that final elimination with that little turret. That little turret from Killjoy actually, it's a little bit of an AI situation. It is going to auto-lock onto a player in its line of sight and just immediately start firing at them. I hate it when I'm playing in a game because it doesn't do a lot of damage. It does just like a little bit, but it's so annoying. And you're just like, oh, I've got to worry about taking this thing out before I'm able to continue on my merry way. And then sometimes it just distracts you and it ends up being a whole thing. But it is a good tool to have and one of those things that makes that character such an important part of the team composition.
We see things getting cracked open here in round number 17. Yapper just swinging through, finding two. Alpha will not let things slide so easily. But still, Team CNB with double the agents. 4 total against 1 Tappers is 2. Whatever will Tappers do? They've got to rotate after hearing the 4 teleports. And now also have to rediscover the positions of Team CNB during this post-plant phase.
Yeah, and as you can see, a lot of utility going out for the remaining players to push onto this site, as well as set up those pieces that are going to make it more difficult for the remaining players of 1 Tappers to get onto that defuse. They're still a little bit far away from it, have been able to take away some of Rose's pieces of utility, and that does mean that Evan is going to be in a good place here. Some of those boxes can, as you can see, get shot through, but it is not going to be enough. Evan, with the peaks and with the crosshair lineup, is going to get 1 Tapper's 8 points.
Yeah, another aspect of maps to consider in your tactical construction is that not all cover is created equal. Some can be, shot through, and so that's going to be, a point that you have to keep in mind when you make your decisions. That's exactly why Evan chooses to take the fight there as opposed to sticking the spike.
Mm-hmm. All right, a little bit. These 2 teams here, both of them not looking as strong with their economies here. So some players a little bit more beefed up than others. Gather information for Humber Weiwei with that ultimate ability.
Oh, using...
And Rose tries to go for a vengeful rotation here. That spike is down, so the remaining CNB players are just a little bit too far away. But thankfully, Yapper's character has a long-range teleportation that does allow, though in a non-corporeal form, is still able to retrieve that spike. So very nicely able to make it work. And red HPs for everyone across the board. And we'll see, though blinded, Humberto has a lot to fight through, gets tagged up by that camera, and a lot of lines of sight just blocked off here. This is not really ideal for the side of 1 Tappers, and we could see Humberto go for what is called a save at this point, where you've decided that there's no way that you're going to be able to fight against the remaining players, and you won't have enough to buy up tools into the next round, and so you're deciding to just wait it out, call this one a loss. Oh, unfortunately, Humberto isn't able to do so. Yapper actually goes hunting for that final player. But the idea behind a save is that you're trying to hold on to that piece of weaponry and go into the next round with it and kind of have a hero situation where you have a much stronger gun than a lot of the other players in the round and just kind of work with that despite having taken a little bit of a loss in that round. It's not a race. It is a full-on marathon, and so just trying to take into consideration the context of the full game, and sometimes you take losses to try and win in other rounds.
Absolutely, you have to think about the long term because at the end of the day, you're looking at the series score, not the score on each individual map. Working up a short using that Trailblazer the dog is Team CNB. Trying to get a little bit of information, jumping through that Viper wall to see if they can find something while also keeping themselves on the move so they're not easy targets.
And while that vision wall denial is down from that wall, a lot of shots coming out. No one going down yet, and a little bit of healing is going to be able to come through from that Sage. But a collision on the other side of the map while the teleporter is creating quite a ruckus. And it's finally going to be an execute onto this A site from the side of CNB.
A lockdown ultimate out of Killjoy. Any enemy caught inside of that bubble when it pops is going to be detained, meaning they will not be able to move. Now, no one will be caught in it. Instead, it is used to create space for the side of Team CNB and delay one Tapper's retake. They have a lot less time to work with now in trying to defuse the spike. Having fun going for one, going for two, and Rose the third to close it out. 11 total to CNB, and we are slowly but surely approaching that finish line, Becky.
Yeah, 11 points, and as we mentioned, it is going to be first to 13. If, hypothetically, both of these teams get to a 12-12 situation, we do go into what is called overtime, where one team has to win by 2 points. Kind of think of it as like tennis, if you're familiar with that.
Exactly, and they're switching sides every other round. Now, that is something we don't do often in tennis because, you know, we don't want to be walking that much, right? When you get to OT in tennis, your legs are probably giving out anyways.
Not something that we're going to have to worry about just yet either. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but for now, CNB is looking to see how they can solidify these last 2 rounds into their favor and take Bind as their first point in this best of 3.
Well, right now, it looks like they're trying to see if they can get their way into B.
I know exactly where you are.
There's that opening pick across the map, having fun as the lurker.
Oh, but this is going to be pretty big. All right, it looks like Wuzu does decide to come back here and goes a little bit hunting, prowling, trying to see if we can find this player going for that plant. Does manage to take out Rose, but thankfully the rest of the team is there for those trades, so Yapper is going to be the one to follow up with that plant, leaving only one player from one Tappers remaining after the lurk that Having Fun was able to so flawlessly get off.
No drama.
This is map point now, Becky. 12-8. Team CNB on Bind, a dominant force. And that isn't to say Team 1 Tappers haven't shown off their stuff either. We're seeing great things out of Evan right now. 28 eliminations on their own, but it looks like you can see that stat spread much more even for the side of Team CNB. That teamwork coming together with how they've been navigating the map, and I think particularly Anorak on Sky has been getting a lot of information. It's not all about your eliminations, but what utility you can provide to your teammates.
Yeah. And speaking of utility, that is going to be that ultimate ability coming through to try and gather that information. CNB on the precipice of taking this map home. They're at 12. They're trying to fight for this 13th point that would mean they're winning this first match. Oh, ultimate's being popped all across the board. It's do or fall for both of these teams here, and Yapper going to be the one to grab that first elimination. Evan trying to hold down the fort as much as possible, but it's just not going to be enough. Every player from CNB showing off as much as possible as they take home the first map of Bind. All right, everybody, we are going to be going to a quick break here while all of us in this theater get a lovely showing from the Bassett High cheerleaders.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Bassett Unified Esports Grand Finals for Valorant. We just came off the tail end of an amazing map 1 where Team CNB have taken the lead. And before we get to map number 2, first of all, we got a cute little QR code to throw up onto the screen for you guys to see, which is going to give you access to our stream. So go ahead and get tuned in over there and go ahead and follow for further educational broadcasts. It's been an awesome time here so far, Becky. And honestly, if you guys want to get entertained like this, you got to tune into those streams. You got to see more because there's kids all across the state of California competing at this level. And again, these teams at Bassett, whoever wins, gets an invite to further competitions down the line. So if you want to go ahead and stay tuned with them, that's the way to do so. And of course, also check out Carrot Esports on YouTube for videos or VODs of these matches and streams going further down the line.
All right, and as we get situated now going into match number 2, but before we get into more Valorant action, let's take a peek back at some of the highlights from that last game that we got to see.
Bind, it was so even starting off at the start of the map, and then eventually, slowly but surely, Team CNB kind of expanding their lead. But man, these moments were so impactful. Everyone kind of getting their moment in the spotlight.
That's really true. We did get to see a lot of spotlight moments across multiple players on both sides of the board, which is always really great to see. And normally I feel like it's hard to force in a highlight for certain players, but it was not hard to do that here. And I'm so excited getting to see everyone, as you mentioned, really do a lot of shining across the board here. I will mention that this map number 1 of Bind was the map pick for CNB, who were the ones who took down this victory. So there is usually a little bit of a correlation. A team is going to pick a map that they feel like they're a little bit advantaged on, or they feel a little bit more comfortable on. And so as we go into our second map, that is going to be One Tapper's map pick, this could kind of be the thing that changes the tide and potentially brings us to a map number 3. I love getting to see players' reactions to moments. I love that we got to see Rose, hands on face, just like, oh my gosh, that was so close.
Yeah, a lot of these moments kept us at the edge of our seats as casters. I can only imagine how the players felt.
And like, speaking of that, like, a lot of these players, we have some of them returning from the championship last year on the side of One Tappers, but for a lot of these players, this is their first time competing. This is their first time kind of being a part of this rodeo, and they haven't really had much of a chance to compete, not a lot of chance to be under the spotlight. And so this is kind of a new and fresh experience for a lot of players.
Yeah, I mean, to mention Matthew, aka Wuzu, Evan, aka Nave, and Vin, aka Alphas were the ones who are returning from last year. So,
beautiful to see.
As we move forward, we'll see our agent select Haven. You mentioned it earlier, Becky, is the map we're going to. It was One Tapper's pick, so we're expecting a little bit more out of them this time around as well. They were putting in the work in map number 1. Maybe we'll see a victory out of them in map number 2. Now, what we want to mention is in that pick ban process, it is One Tappers who also got to decide the third map, because they are Team B in our map pick process, which means that they may have an advantage on map 3 as well because of the pick order they chose. So right now, if CNB wants to close it out, it would be here on Haven.
And there's a lot to be said in this map pick and ban situation for going for some of these more, for lack of a better term, normal map picks. The most popular map picks are going to be Haven and Ascent, as they've been the maps that have been around for the longest and they've seen the most competitive play. So there's a lot to be said when you're picking that as your map pick, that you're maybe kind of leveling the playing field as opposed to picking something where you could have an advantage. So this could be a place where CNB is saying, sure, like, I already know Haven super well. I don't really need to worry about this being uneven footing for me, whereas Bind has a little bit more of a tendency to lean in that direction.
And a fun fact here, Becky, Bind, Haven, and Split, the 3 maps that we're playing here today, were part of the original 3 maps released with the game. So if you've been playing since the start of Valorant, you'll recognize these maps, and these players definitely have had enough time to study up, brush up, and get familiar.
All right, so we are seeing a little bit of a shakeup as far as agents selected for this map. Having Fun previously was a player on that Cypher, but now we're going to see Having Fun move over onto that Jet, which, considering the amount of frags that Having Fun was able to get in the map before, is something that I would have expected from that previous map. But this time around, kind of sliding more into that duelist role that I think fits with how they played that first map. Unfortunately for Humberto, does fall very quickly there. It's really difficult to try and go for those trades when you have your utility out, and 4 picks to start things off, as Having Fun has not decided to wait for everyone else to also have fun.
No, not at all right now, taking a massive lead in round number 1. Good for 4, as they say. And they have the right to say, I have my 1. Wuzu, all alone in the 1v4. And
I feel like this is a situation where I think that Anarok is just trying to run around, locate the final player. Everyone is trying to make sure that Having Fun is going to have a situation to go for what's called an ace, which is where one player eliminates all 5 of the opposing team. Unfortunately, the dash forward makes that a little bit more difficult, and so Crisis is going to be the final player to get that last one, and CNB find at least their first round of this map.
I think that was a little bit of a misinput there by Having Fun. We generally don't want to be right in the face of the enemy, but sometimes it does happen that way.
Especially when you're playing Jet, who is a very movement-centric duelist. A lot of duelists do have a lot of movement abilities. Jet's just is a little more flashy, for lack of a better term. You can see the way that she moves and has the ability to move upward, which is very different from a lot of other characters in the game of Valorant.
She has been a fan favorite of the game ever since release, and it's because she gets to have those flashy plays, that dash being the most integral part of her kit. Now jumping up to the top of C site, but punished for it immediately, giving the defenders an advantage here where they normally wouldn't. Rose trying to fight their way back, tooth and nail, but unfortunately, Alphas comes around and they're going to even this up. We were talking in map number 1 how we expect the team who wins round 1 to snowball into round 2. So this is a very unusual course of events, and one-tappers showing off that they're not going to take this line down.
Yeah, actually, I think it's really interesting. CNB did get that first pick onto Blitz, and so it makes sense. Usually when you get an elimination kind of early into a round, you say, okay, since we got this elimination, there's probably fewer players on the defensive side who are ready to defend this site. So it makes more sense to quickly move into this area. Unfortunately for the side of CNB, one-tappers had quite a few players hanging out and ready to go for a strong defense on that C site. So it didn't end up working out how you would normally expect for it to go, and as a result, one-tappers have evened it up to a 1-1.
Oh, Having Fun. Grabbing that ultimate orb to work up the full ability to use Blade Storm, which is going to equip them with some floating tools that can be used with accuracy even in the air. Meanwhile, Wuzu making magic happen out in the middle of the map.
Yeah, has been able to get quite a bit done. Unfortunately, Having Fun trying to make those quick rotations. A lot of the time you will pull your melee out because it allows your character to move faster, but it unfortunately does mean that you're not as prepared as you should be for those moments when collision strikes.
Yeah, there will inevitably be a fight with the opponent. You don't want to be caught out with the wrong tool in hand. Ooh, Yapper with some great positioning here in a 1v5 to isolate people coming in. But Wuzu is more than ready for a surprise. Good for 4 in this round.
Yeah, we talked a lot about the good for 4 in that first one coming out from Having Fun, but we would be remiss if we didn't mention it from Wuzu as well, who also was making some nice, I mean, one-tappers have named themselves one-tappers, and we got to see a decent amount of one-taps coming out there. So living up to that namesake, and a strong start, that Viper's Pit already ready for Wuzu, and that's a great piece of defensive utility on a character that already kind of thrives on a defensive side.
I'm looking into right now the ultimates that are slowly building up, and Wuzu with the Viper's Pit. I mean, they were so active in using it on Bind, but Haven isn't really the type of map that we normally see it on. Still, they use it over on C. This slows down Team CNB, forces them to the A side where the spike is dropped. Crisis works to reclaim it and throws the Haunt ability, which would reveal anyone that it sees. It doesn't see anyone, so they're going to go ahead and press forward onto the A site. And now Team One Tappers have to work their way around the map to start the defuse process.
Yeah, and that was a really good trade that we actually got to see between these two players. And while CNB is a little disadvantaged as far as their tools are concerned, being able to at least get the spike planted and get the extra credits from that is going to be quite impactful, as Evan makes an aggressive drop down, but it's really difficult to retain accuracy in those moments. And all the setup from this Killjoy unfortunately gets taken down, and Wuzu was
practice and instinct.
It really does. You do get rewarded for understanding a lot of the kind of patterns that people make in this game. I do also want to highlight Evan has gone ahead and picked up a pretty similar agent to the Reyna, or at least as close to Reyna as you can be. And it's interesting to see players who have a very style of character that they really like to continue to hold on to. Wuzu going down extremely early here from a little bit of a collision with Having. They previously got bitten by committing after taking out a player really early on. And this time CNB is saying, I'm not going to fall for that this time around. So let's go ahead, make a rotation to a different area and see if we can catch somebody just off guard or on their rotation on the defensive side. And thankfully is able to do that there. But Alphas is going to try and make some quick rebuttals here. Has the Dimensional Drift ready and is just trying to see what's going to be the call. Not prepared for the players who are hanging out and running up green. It is just Having Fun remaining. Are we going to be able to make the spray transfers? We are not. 4 in the pocket for Having Fun, but not enough to take over that round. The 4 that really comes through is going to be the 4 points for One Tappers with this defuse.
4-1, slowly building up to that Hunter's Fury ultimate. And something that I want to note, that Hunter's Fury is the giant laser we saw on Bind, and that is a direct counter to Killjoy's lockdown ultimate ability. So that's a dynamic that you'll see throughout the course of this map, is that if Humber has their ultimate up, they can use it to counter Roses, but for now it isn't. So it would be an opportune time for the attackers to drop it wherever they need space.
And the attackers previously found quite a bit of success trying to go towards this B site last time, but this time around, One Tappers putting a lot of focus on keeping their units strong on that portion of the map. Having Fun was a lurker in the game before, is going to try and lurk in this game again, but it gets caught up in this ultimate from this ISO and forced into a 1v1 that has Evan coming out on top.
Whoa, but walking into C is Anorak, who immediately is dropped. Wuzu good for 2, and Alphas sending Rose back to where they came, which is the buy phase.
The buy phase once again. This is a place where, again, when I was talking to the players before going into this game, as we take a peek at this replay of this 1v1 ultimate, I talked to these players and they were like, oh, well, we play pretty aggressively. And then I was talking to Humberto, who is the captain for the side of One Tappers, and he was like, sometimes it's not a good thing. Sometimes it's a good thing, but sometimes aggressive, especially if it's not something that you can kind of toggle on and off, can end up being bad. But so far it seems like the aggression is working out wonderfully for the side of One Tappers as they're at 5-1 here.
Oh, the Fade ultimate coming out. That is the Nightmare to deafen opponents as well as create a trail to where they are if they are hit by it, which doesn't seem too many were. But combined with the Killjoy lockdown, undeniably gives a ton of space.
Oh, detained by that lockdown. Blitzen not able to move away fast enough. And now at an equal 3-3 here, Yapper, as well as the rest of CNB, able to kind of just hold on to these corners and kind of wait out as this spike ticks down. Evan, though, equalized it to a 1v1, almost able to get those shields through that extra little bit. The little mini game that ISO has to play, where once you're able to get a pick, you can go ahead and take out the little orb that spawns next to people, and that gives you a shield going into further battles. And it makes for quite a potent 1v1 character.
It blocks any form of damage. It doesn't matter if it's an enemy's weapon. It doesn't matter if it's a little dart. It doesn't matter if it's their ultimate ability. ISO's shield will block it.
Yeah, it ends up resulting in some really interesting things. We actually saw that shield get taken out by some fall damage actually earlier, and I think it was interesting to see because it literally made the difference in that 1v2 situation where Evan would have won in that 1v2, but unfortunately lost the shield. And as we see, Wuzu actually able to do a lot of defensive work here, using those snake bites as well as that wall to block off information and make it really difficult to push forward. Dimensional Drift now going to come through from Alphas and allow for the side of one-tappers to gather information and locate CNB members. Unfortunately, it does also let the opposing team know where Alphas is. Wuzu, though, nicely able to line up two before running out of ammo there. And it's now going to be Humberto left in a 1v2. Unfortunately, not able to find those shots as players were caught with their knives out.
An amazing opportunity slipping through their fingers, but still able to win it out, just waiting for some indication of what is going on, and they should be hearing that plant sound. If not, the spike has definitely been planted, so they should know what is going on. 13 rounds left as they walk towards the A site. They're smoked off. 15 seconds for the dart if they want to wait to get a little bit more information, but it looks like they'll dry peek out of the smoke to find one. Reduces the numbers, and this is still possible. Toward L, and caught seemingly unaware is Anorak.
Yeah, very nicely done from Humberto there. Is going to clutch that one up and get one-tappers up to 6. Let's get a replay of that one.
Wuzu lining everything up for themselves over here at B. Things were looking pretty grim with 4 people walking right at them, but still making gold out of thread. And Humber here at the very end to close it out. Yeah, even the scoreboard reflects what Wuzu is doing for their team right now on Viper, nonetheless.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like Wuzu has also just been the one who coincidentally has been on the site that CNB tried to attack every single time. So that is playing a little bit of a factor, but I also have to give props here is being the one to kind of go for these jump peaks, is trying to gather as much information as possible, and isn't just falling off of these sites. And this could end up being one of those places where one-tapper's aggression could end up biting them. A lot of the time, if you do go for some of those aggressive peaks on the defensive side, it can kind of lead to some unfortunate things happening where you get caught out and then your team is left with fewer numbers. But so far, that hasn't happened. One-tappers and Wuzu holding down the fort very nicely.
Out comes the Fade Eye to potentially reveal anyone on B, but it is broken before it can activate. And so the site is a mystery to Team C and B. Humber, though, has got enough information to throw out a shock dart and find one with it. Having fun, though. Creating...
Find enemy lines. All right, located and finds Evan. Unfortunately gets put into a 1v2, but Blitz trying to run away, but is stuck, tethered there. The knife comes out, and having fun is going to be able to pick up that elimination. Wuzu, now the only player remaining for one-tappers, trying to dismantle what CNB has put together, and now we're left in a 1v1 as Anorak tries to go for the defense and clutches it up. One-tappers, they're a bunch of clutch demons.
Yeah, they are. That is the way to define them. Let's go check that out one more time.
Let's do it. And taking a peek, again, having fun, did a great job, was behind enemy lines, almost caught Blitzen unaware. Okay, they both pulled their knives out. They were both trying to, I love that. That's it's a little bit of an honor system moment there. And I kind of adore it as Wuzu able to 1v3 clutch that one up. And this is I feel like Wuzu was somebody, we had mentioned that we got to highlight a lot of players. We got to see beautiful moments from everyone on the side of both of these teams in that first match, but Wuzu is just on another level in this one.
Face your fear!
Absolutely. Oh, once again, the Nightfall Alpha lurking up from the defense behind the attackers. Good for one, but immediately traded out. And then on the site, fighting one, maybe going for another while they're shielded, uses the undercut to get some space, teleports into the arena, which will reset their HP and armor to take an even and fair fight.
And even in fair fight, except for that a lot of the time ISO has a shield to block the first bit of damage, and so it does allow for Evan to pick up that first one. Rose, unfortunately, doesn't find the shots on that defusing player until too late. Picks up 3, but unfortunately does not collect the round, and CNB remain at 2 with 1 tappers at 8.
Let's get a look on that one once again. Break down the Ice Ultimate. Yeah, you're right, Becky. They still have this shield going into it. But nonetheless, not untouched in the 1v1.
True. Did get that shield taken down. Unfortunately, it does end up usually blocking quite a bit of damage. And once again, I mean, it is pretty similar to the Reyna that has the ability to, upon getting eliminations, you have something that allows you to heal or to kind of reset yourself after going for those more risky plays. And ISO does a lot of the same thing. Alpha's trying to go for some of those jousts, unfortunately not able to capitalize on any of them, and instead just decides to teleport to safety to join up with the rest of the defensive side.
Meanwhile, a member of 1 Tappers revealed on the site and forced to flee. Give away the space. Might as well retake the site with as many members as possible. And so they do. They have an agent up. They're going in with ISO's wall to block any incoming damage. And Blitzen and Evan are both making magic happen on this A site as they continue to just steamroll to the defuse.
Yeah, I'm actually really interested. Hopefully we will have a replay of this round as well, because I think this is one of those beautiful examples of teamwork that we get to see within this game. I mean, we got to see, as you mentioned, just deciding to, okay, again, this game is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So deciding, okay, we're going to give up this site, we're going to allow you to get this spike planted, but then we're going to focus on using a lot of our utility in tandem. That makes it way difficult for our opponents to fight back against what we're doing. And 1 Tappers were able to do that in that retake situation phenomenally. And as a result, we're seeing 2 operators come out, which are very long-range weapons. And this is going to mean it is that much more important for the controller on the side of CNB to make sure that as much line of sight is blocked off as possible.
Now, we saw the Marshal as well as the Operator come into play, and now those are those long-range tools that pack a punch. That being said, it's Team CNB sneaking up through Garage, but that's not going to get under Evan's radar. They still catch him.
That didn't hit Yapper? Oh, this is sneaky.
By the skin of their teeth, dodging everything. And it seems like they might catch the defenders unaware. They do, but can't find a second. Only the first Crisis with 40 health points on the board needs to discover the spike, plant it, and defend it.
Oh, a rough spot to be in for Crisis, as we mentioned. Does not get the location revealed by that recon bolt, so is remaining safe here. It's just going to try and see if we can catch the opposing team unawares. Unfortunately, though, Humberto, very smart to check back on those corners and capitalizes very nicely. 10-2, a stark difference to the close match that we saw in map number 1. And 1 Tappers, let's take a look at some of these replays and see how they got here.
Oh, Wuzu clutching up definitely composes a lot of these clips. Having fun coming through, opening up the sites is going to be a staple of their character. And I'm actually excited to see how they use Jet on the defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Considering that we saw Having Fun play one of those very defense-centric characters when we were on Bind, and now has moved to a very attack-centric character, that we got to see some great clips come out of unfortunately, that does mean that you really have a lot of pressure put on you on the defensive side to continue to have the same level of impact.
And here we go, the first round of the second half. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, that credit economy has reset. All of these teams are on the most basic of tools to utilize throughout this round. It really comes down to calls and team play.
Yeah, a lot of movement coming out from the side of One Tappers, trying to make sure that they are in difficult to deal with places, and as a result, having fun. Tries to come in and regain control of site, but quickly gets taken down. Running out of ammo hurts, but it allows for CNB to take this third round into their pocket. And One Tappers, double digits they may have, but this could be the start of CNB's comeback story.
Yeah, even though that there's 3 sites for the attackers to choose from, recently, statistically, Haven has become a little bit more defender-sided because of the strategies that teams are implementing. So Team One Tappers, of course, taking the lead while they were on the defense. Team CNB now has the same opportunity, exactly as you said, Becky.
And it is kind of interesting. There is, technically speaking, a advantage for attacking or defending side on pretty much every single map. And it is interesting that when I first started playing this game, everyone was like, oh, this is an attacking sided map because you have more options in the form of more sites to plant the spike. It leans itself in that direction. But in reality, these sites are so difficult to take. Unfortunately, that little nano swarm from Rose is going to be the doom of Wuzu there. And that buys a ton of time for the defensive side of CNB to make these rotations and try to defend this site once more. But unfortunately, Evan and Blitzen coming in with the same such fury.
Here it is, the 2v2. Evan holding the CT angle. Players walking out. Spots them. I like these jump jiggles to get information, right? Neither team really has a lot to work
But
with.
a beautiful blind from Anurag there. Unfortunately, the blind is not going to be enough if the shots come through for Evan. I mean, we said it already, but One Tappers, the clutch demons that they are, we're getting a replay of that one and taking a peek once more. So this is one of those situations where Killjoy not only has that little robot that does a lot of the work that you need as far as peeking is concerned, but also has a lot of damage dealing abilities that will punish you for trying to go for either those defuse or go for that planting situation. Very nicely done, and a very nice clutch coming out from Evan there in that round. And that's one of those moments where you're really thankful for your teammate who has been doing a lot of those aim routines.
Yes, indeedy. Now, speaking of aiming, Anorak aiming out those smokes to give themselves some room to sneak out with, and I like the placement of that dark cover so they can step through the Viper's wall. Now, One Tappers out on the site, blinded, but not forever. Evan recovers their sight and has full information, staring down the possible entryways for the defenders as they come in. Crisis, finding that you're in the back of C.
Oh, finds another one as well. Very close hold for a lot of these players, and unfortunately that shield is not going to be enough to stop the rapid fire from Rose's shots here. Wuzu now down long and is going to rely on a lot of these lineups that we mentioned from that previous map once again. Unfortunately, the last time I think we saw them not line up exactly perfectly, and this time they also aren't exactly perfect, so has to follow up on that the good old-fashioned way. But hey, that works well enough, and One Tappers find themselves on match point.
Wuzu using a secondary method for creating lineups on the fly. So a lot of the times players will have memorized areas using references on their screen to create these perfect post-plant mollies. And instead, Wuzu is using kind of their sound circle on the mini-map. So nice little technique to make things on the fly instead of having to memorize, you know, everything to heart. Which is great because they got to leave room in their brain for their studies.
I thought you just had room in your brain for everything.
I wish.
I wish as well. Oh, having fun, trying to make a little bit of a cheeky play there, but unfortunately is not able to bring that one home. Dimensional Drift is going to gather information for the side of One Tappers once again.
It's you
as
and me.
These nanoswarms are going to stop a lot of the attacking side from pushing too far. Evan, isolations in place to make sure that we're able to get those eliminations without any distractions.
Oh, a cheesy little kill hiding in the corner. Alpha gets one. Up to Yapper here, down long. They do have a teammate walking in from CT as well, but we'll see what this Cypher can do because now they are well and truly alone.
Oh, Yapper alone. And that's going to be enough for One Tappers. 13 points will be taking home this second map. And we are at a 1-1, preparing to go into map number 3.
What an exciting series so far, Becky.
Yeah, I mean, we got to see quite a different kind of skill set come through in that match as well. I mean, we saw a rise of a player that we didn't really highlight as much in that first map. And so let's take a look at these replays and see those highlights once again.
From bottom to top, I mean, the journey that Tappers took was a pretty smooth one. And that first 4K, by having fun, I think really set the tempo for us.
It really did, and I honestly was expecting to see that same level of aggression come through a lot more, and we kind of did, but I think that honestly on that defensive side, we just saw One Tappers do such a good job of shutting down that level of aggression, and so we didn't get to see it have that same level of success as we went further and further into the match, which is unfortunate. Like, we saw some great plays once again from every single one of these players. But again, it also really came up to what? I think we had 5 clutches from the side of One Tappers, and that's a lot of situations where just one solo player was in 1v2, 1v3 situations that they ended up getting the better of.
Yeah, that's an impressive amount of discipline, we have to say, right? Because a lot of people, they find themselves, the weight of the team is on their shoulders, and they get really nervous, which is fine. It's natural. It's what we expect. But to keep your calm, to be cool and collected, well, it's definitely another level of skill. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we see this series come to an end, we're going to be right back. Stay tuned. We'll finish this all off on the map of Split.
At SteelSeries, we make gaming gear so you can be anything you want, except one thing: ordinary. So why pick on someone your own size? Fight the biggest bad guy you can find. Why score a regular goal? Do something that makes your opponent lose their mind. Why build a boring little house? Create something nobody's seen before. Now that's beautiful. Why waste your ammo on this guy? He's so good at games he just nades himself to death. And why settle for just one trophy? Send us a DM when you win 10. That's the mentality we love at SteelSeries. And that's why we make the gaming gear you need to destroy ordinary. So get in game and go for glory.
right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Let's take a peek at some of the lovely people hanging out in our crowd here at Bassett Unified Esports High School Championships of Valorant. I'm Becky Vera, joined here by Ashcon, and we're getting ready to bring you into a nail-biter match number 3 between these two teams.
Yeah, it's going to be taking place on Split, and this was One Tappers' forced map. So it's not their map pick per se, but it was between two maps. They banned the other one, so it's basically their map pick.
At least a little bit. You're certainly putting one in a situation where you're like, this is the one of the 2 remaining. This is the one that I'm happier to have. So it is going to be a split here, 1-1 between CNB and One Tappers. Will it be the freshman squad, or will it be 3 out of 5 returning champions in the form of One Tappers in the seniors who will take this series home?
Well, let's find out as we go right to Agent Select and we get to talk about these team compositions. Split as a map, as we mentioned, was one of the original 3, Becky, but it's gone through a lot of iterations. But I will tell you this, it has consistently been defender-sided. There was a point where things were 50-50 and we're going to overtime a lot statistically, but it still remained kind of a defender's favored map. The attackers are slowly encroaching upon them. But again, as always, comes down to the team comp, and these teams have been relatively unique.
Yeah, I was going to say it is interesting to see. A lot of the time you will see people pick up certain agents because they are stronger on certain maps. Certain characters have utility that works better with certain kind of corners or long ranges that are available on each of the different maps. However, Team One Tappers, same team composition pretty much every single game. The only thing that has changed has been one of those duelist roles, which has been, I believe, from Evan. So everyone else, completely same picks, which I think also speaks to comfort picks, which ends up being a rather big thing in the game of Valorant as well. If you're really used to the utility of a certain character, you have a lot of hours on that character, you kind of want to continue to roll with what you know because it allows for you to play better on the fly when you're in those comfort situations.
All right, let's go ahead into the pre-round of the first round as we move into splits. And to build on that, Becky, I mean, the comfort roles are super huge for anyone who's a fan of soccer or football, right? You wouldn't ever have your goalie come up to the front and play as a striker unless they happen to be a jack of all trades.
Hey, that happens every once in a while. It's not super common, but it can happen every once in a while. CNB, on the other hand, has changed things up a lot of times. They've really been trying to kind of mold their team composition to the strength of a map. And potentially that has some downfalls, but Wuzu going to be able to find 2 before the quick push from the attacking side of CNB is onto the site, and the spike is planted. Alphas, though, nicely able to peek out and find one low HP, but at least still in this game to gather information.
Oh, having fun, evening the odds for their team. CNB finds the target on another, but Blitz isn't going to let this slide. A 1v1 while that ISO is low.
Yeah, that ISO is low and was not able to get the 1 tap either. This is a place where it's a little bit unfortunate for somebody like the Sage. That bomb does have a time limit, and I don't think that Blitzen was able to get onto this fast enough, and so it is going to go the way of CNB.
I don't know what happened. Maybe it was a little bit of confusion, maybe a bit of premature celebration. They had the time limit. It was 1.05 seconds left on that clock, and I think there was a little bit of delay in getting onto that spike, and we even saw them stand there for a second.
Yeah, I think it does end up being one of those moments where you're like, oh, I really did that. And then you're like, oh, I still have a job to do. And you get a little bit surprised in the moment. As we mentioned, 1 second still left, so full eliminations on both sides, but the point does go over to CNB, and so they are going to be a little more rich than their opponents going into the second round.
Oh, here we go. Running out onto A. Alpha with the defending elimination. Getting out of dodge, moving safely, and has a flash in hand to blind any enemies that they want to take a confrontation with.
Oh, and we're actually seeing something that is not super typical as well. Rose is going to be able to get that first flash off, but unfortunately not win that 1v1. Trying to hold down the fort here is Crisis. But unfortunately, the shots coming out from the side of One Tappers just hitting a little bit closer to home. And that's thanks to something that goes against what Ashcon and I have been talking about so much, which is the kind of economy situation that happens very typically. And sometimes you do see a team who, even though they lost the first round and they maybe don't have as much to afford and kind of accrue a lot of their interest, they decide to just go ahead and buy anyway. They say, I think we can win. We might as well just see. We'll take the risk. And sometimes it works out. And One Tappers have shown that they can make it work out.
And that does make sense because they've done it on both maps that were their pick. So it's that confidence coming into play again, right? It all starts with a pick and ban. You're planting the seed for success later in the series.
Yeah, Wuzu peeking out enough to gather information. Hear those footsteps of players entering onto this B site and is able to move back to safety. That Sage barrier did go up, but it looks like the side of CNB are just going to try and catch players on rotations instead of going for that quick commit.
Oh, blinding lights going out to support the battle that Team CNB takes in the middle of the map. And now they're going to progress through over to the A side. Alphas with the flash trying to find anyone to help out with the numbers, to put it in back in the favor of One Tappers, but no line of sight connects as the spike is going to end up planted over at A.
Yeah, I actually really like this rotation that we're seeing from CNB. It is really difficult to get through a lot of that early Viper utility that Wuzu has set up. And so saying that we're just going to play around it across other portions of the map and use what information we have is a great level of communication and adaptation coming out from CNB.
Now here, One Tappers have to take their time clearing each and every corner because they don't have any information. Wuzu taking it slow and successfully finds one. Is it another? No! The shots do not connect, and Having Fun tucked away in a cheeky little corner unchecked. Makes it a total of 3 in round 3.
In round 3 and 2 points for CNB. That ultimate is ready to go, both for Yapper as well as Having Fun. So a strong start for both of those players. One Tappers do also have that dimensional drift. And this ends up being in like another economy factor, is being able to kind of ration how you use a lot of those ultimates in each one of these rounds and use them to kind of make up for the lack of credit economy that your team might have.
Having Fun holding out this undercut, this ultimate ability, their isolation.
Oh, Wuzu, not the right piece of weaponry that you want to have for a 1v1 at that length. So a nice quick pick coming out from Having Fun and a second to follow.
We see the wall go through, Spike taken away, 2v4 once again. I've seen this episode before, we're just running it on a different site. And we have Reyna and Yoru back-to-back. If it is a retake, these are kind of the agents that you would want, the two agents that are good to take fights. And Evan is ulted using the Empress. They were able to dismiss, turn invisible to drop to the ground, but unfortunately are caught upon reveal.
Oh, Alpha's now the only one remaining. Unfortunately, does get caught in a little bit of a crossfire there, and Having Fun is going to be the one to find that final elimination and 3 for the side of CNB, who've done a really great job of getting capitalization onto each of these sites and really holding down those post-plant situations. One Tappers trying to dig deep into those pockets, make whatever buys they can work. Not deciding to save until next, since their buy is a little bit separated between each one of these players. And it is just going to be a hope that they can make it happen within this round, regardless of their buys.
Having Fun leading the charge. On the tail of the Trailblazer. Tries to find a shot, but it's Yapper who's going to open things up.
Oh, nice trade back though, yeah, from Alphas.
He's responding. And this wall by Anorak could stall potentially. But that is a decoy. One of Yoru's signature abilities. We're not going to be, taking aim at those, as it will turn around and destroy your line of sight. You know what else will? Evan with a Sheriff. They are an absolute menace right now on this map. 2 versus 3, Becky.
Wow, very nicely done from Evan and Alphas, actually going for that double swing. It does make it so difficult to navigate those situations when you're all of a sudden peeking into multiple players. So very nice teamwork actually coming out from both of those players in that situation. And it does reward them with a round point there. One tappers find themselves at 2 to CNB's 3.
Looking at the ultimates available, Wuzu has that Viper's Pit. And what I really like what Wuzu has been doing throughout this entire best of 3 series is they don't hold on to that ult. You know, they don't let it go to waste, as we have seen, you know, a lot of players do. They're very particular about getting it out of the way and using it to its fullest extent as soon as they can.
Yeah, and I think that that is kind of like a strength. As I mentioned, it ends up being an economy situation. And much like any other economy, you're trying to decide, is me holding on to this going to continue to benefit me, or should I just go ahead and use it when it's at its strongest or as quickly as possible? And so I like the decision to just go ahead and use it as quickly as possible and get closer to reworking those points back up to use it as many times as possible within a half, as Evan is going to be the one to walk away with 2 there in that fight towards the middle of the map. Rose is going to have to throw out a flurry of utility to try and back away safely. Oh, we are in the thick of it.
Indeed, as they slowly have their HP decayed away. They could find this timing, though, to get rid of the Viper's Pit, and they do! Off screen, we see it having fun, opening up the site for the squad. But Yapper has to go the opposite way. Has the information on both of the defenders, so they have this opportunity, but they need to make an aggressive play. They don't want to find themselves in a situation with 2 enemies staring at them at the same time.
Yeah, this is going to be a difficult
30 seconds left.
place to navigate. I mean, anytime you're in a 1v2, it's a difficult place to navigate, and does set up some of those cyber cages to make sure that a lot of those lines of sight can be blocked off. Safely gets that spike planted, and now just has to hope that people fall right into Yapper's clutches, and so far, so good. Alphas did indeed fall into that trap laid there. Yapper now able to upgrade weapons, and with the pieces of utility available, Yapper clutches it up 4 to 2 here, and CNB hold on to their lead.
Wow, beautifully played by Yapper. And definitely a bit of overextension by Alphas as well. That teleport down into elbow and kind of going in seemingly unsignaled and uncommunicated to Evan. So Yapper isolating the ones, as we say.
Yeah, it is really interesting also. I mean, Yoru is one of those characters that doesn't get picked super often. As a result of that, it is really difficult for a lot of other characters in the game to follow up on that teleport, because it does put you so far away from the same line of sight. And we're seeing exactly why that is the case here. As Wuzu, for the second time this match, pulled into that isolation. This time, though, does win out against having fun, comes out with full HP, finds another onto Crisis, and that Sage is far onto sight, but only for a moment before Evan is able to pick up 2 as well. And now it is left just up to Rose, 13 HP. Spike in hand, but in a 1v4, this looks like it's going to go the way of a one-tappers here.
Does not fully clear the corner. Blitz taken out. Again, having information on the last 3 defenders, Rose is going to opt to go towards the opposite site. And they need to make an aggressive play here as well. Kind of channeling on Yapper's ability to isolate the ones. They too need to replicate the same style of play.
Yeah, this time we are going for a much more tucked away plant though, and that could end up going well or being really difficult to handle. Unfortunately, the cross section there between the 2 players on site and Wuzu from screens means that it was unfortunately just not going to work out the way that Rose had drew it up, and one-tappers find themselves a 3rd with those 3 players remaining.
I gotta say, Becky, when you go from a 1v2 to 1v3, people think, oh, well, it's just 1 extra person, but it gets exponentially more difficult. Now let's go ahead and run it back to see exactly what happened. You know, Wuzu getting ulted for the 2nd time, ult me once, shame on you, ult me twice, shame on me, but they're not going to lose it twice in a row.
It doesn't seem that way. Wuzu does get the better of having fun there, but I do like this pickup of the ISO when you know that Wuzu has played this Viper every single time. And if something that your team is struggling with is the lack of vision that Viper is causing for your team, then having a character that says, okay, I'm going to take the Viper off the map, that does mean that a lot of those smoke screens are going to go down as well. You're just opening the world for your team in a way that a lot of other agents aren't able to do.
Out comes that dart. Doesn't reveal anyone. Good to wait until it passes. Yapper finding someone at the edge of the wall. Evan as well, punishing an overextension by having fun. So we're here 4-4. Both teams even it out, but that's that Sage Resurrection coming into play, Becky.
I was going to say, I think we've seen a lot of Sages so far in these maps, but we haven't seen a lot of resurrecting happening. The double swing comes through, but unfortunately Alphas comes through correctly timed for one-tappers. They're trying to herd having fun into an unfortunate battle there as Evan Empress is able to continue to take these 1v1s. And unfortunately, the spike out of the hands of the remaining CNB players, and we are going to use that from the shadows, from that Omen, to collect it. Unfortunately for both of these players, it is also a little bit apparent where those players are, and Evan's able to find a fourth and a fifth, and that's going to be this normally would be an ace. It's a little bit weird because of the resurrection that came through in that round, but it is going to be 5 for Evan in that one to equalize this match to a 4-4.
An impressive feat nonetheless, and one most definitely worthy of a replay. And here's the first over in Heaven B. And they don't get the second, but again, that replay comes, that resurrection comes into play exactly like you mentioned, Becky.
Yeah, and this is a place where I would start to be a little bit worried for CNB. They're looking a little bit rough on credits. They're trying to kind of hold down their monetary fort as much as possible, but it's in a rough place. And considering that one-tappers not only are looking better as far as credits are concerned, they also have a lot of ultimates at their hand. Makes this an uphill battle for CNB currently.
That being said, anticipating the side swap, Team CNB do have 2 Sentinels, so when they move to the defense, they may have a bit more of an edge there. They just definitely want to keep them down as they can. Wuzu worked all the way up on B. They realized it's been an all or nothing strategy by Team CNB, and if no one's going to approach them B main, they might as well take all of that space. So Team CNB, realizing that the Viper has pushed all the way up, are going to simply avoid them outright, go through the middle of the map and plant. That is some huge map awareness coming out from all sides.
Yeah, in the middle fight that's happening as well, Evan getting immediately punished for pushing into that many players, and Having Fun is really going to try and hold down the fort here. Oh, Humberto also trying to gather as much space, but it gets really difficult to take that space when tripwires are near and far. Resurrection coming through for one-tappers to try and turn the tide as far as numbers are concerned. And speaking of numbers, Wuzu racking up 4 here. Rose, now the only one remaining, trying to stay safe, but unfortunately it is not going to be enough in that 1v3, and that's the ace sound that we're used to, as Wuzu is going to be the one to collect this one.
And what was it on Haven? They each got 4, and the same 2 now getting 5 each on this map of Split. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. That's what's going on? They're just building up and besting their own records here.
I mean, that's what we love to see. We love to see players making adaptations. We love to see players all having a moment to shine here. And CNB have had a strong start, but with 3 strung together from one-tappers, they've been able to take the lead here. And CNB going to see if they can get the game equalized here once again.
Let's see if that wall fully covers. Maybe a bit shallow, but still the Viper's Pit is going to cover a good amount of territory. But the placement standing next to the orb is not going to work out there for Wuzu. They get caught by Having Fun. Luckily, their allies are there to defend the site in their stead.
Yeah, some back and forths happening here, but the spike is going to be planted by Crisis. Only 2 players from C and B remaining, but they're able to whittle it down to 3 from One Tappers, who are slowly descending onto this site. And we'll see if this crossfire is going to be good enough for C and B to hold on. Unfortunately, the halfway point doesn't actually get held completely, but Evan is actually just going to be able to make the sweet 180 shot that gets One Tappers to their 6th point.
6-4. A decent lead, but again, anticipated from a map like Split being on the defense first. Impressive nonetheless with a double duelist composition. Very aggressive plays by them. I will say, on the other 2 maps, One Tappers, when they were defending, kind of had a more run-it-down type of mindset. And now, instead, they're taking their fights in a more calculated fashion. And I think that may be the effect of, hey, this is the last map of the series coming into play.
Yeah, once you get onto map number 3 and you've maybe had your fun, you've really got to just start to lock it in, as isolation comes through and having fun is going to be able to get the better of alphas, take out that player holding down Heaven, and it's going to be followed up by Crisis also taking out Evan. That is going to be a huge player for the side of One Tappers. And now they've been able to gather all of this space, but unfortunately none of this space is this space where you can plant the spike. And as a result, Humberto and Wuzu are just able to come in and retake a bunch of space.
Team CNB take note of the fact that there's a lot of defenders over at A, so they're going to get out of dodge all the way over to B, having fun, lurking around, good for 1. Leaving Blitz all alone now. One Tappers with a round lead. Can they expand it further in this 1v2 situation? Or will it fall into the lap of CNB, who have a number up? Walking it through the CT side. Making some noise. That's going to indicate to Team CNB exactly where they are, but cutting it after taking a fork in the road.
Yeah, this is a hard place to be for Blitzen. You're kind of forced to continue to run in this situation because you only have so much time to work with. But on top of only having so much time to work with, the more that you run, the more that your opponents can hear you and really isolate where on the map you are. And so odds stacked against Blitzen there, but it does allow for C and B to get us to a 6-5, a chance at an even half in our game number 3. I'm going to have no nails left at the end of this series.
Absolutely not. I'm already calling an appointment.
At the nail salon?
Indeed. Gotta get those nails fixed right up and repaired for the next set of matches, because these are always nail biters.
It's true. Ultimate's ready for both sides of the team in the form of the From the Shadows, which CNB has already used at least once in this series to make some really great spike movements. But there's also the Empress ready for Evan that will allow for a lot of dueling potential to come forward in spades. And having fun, nice, laying in wait, is able to get that first pick onto Wuzu, and there will be no more smoke screens on this board. CNB find themselves onto the site, get that spike down, but unfortunately are not able to find a whole lot more, and I spoke a little bit too soon, as CNB do find the 3 remaining players, 1 apiece to each of those CNB fighters that are left, and 6-6 in map number 3. I thought it was going to be potentially fictitious, but here we are, and honestly, the scoreline between both of these teams is pretty close.
It is definitely pretty even as well. So I'm looking forward to see how these teams want to break that deadlock. No pun intended. That's one of the agents, if you guys don't know. And that really is going to come down to the decision-making of the captains for each of these teams, right? Their comps do have their differences, but I think both of these teams have similar play styles with them, surprisingly enough. And so the discipline to not overextend or make any errors in this intense environment is really what will determine our champion.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, 2 Sentinels, so a lot of defensive power for the side of CNB, but both of those Sentinels were hanging out on the opposite side of the map, so it is going to be a quick collision for the side of one-tappers, who are able to use that Viper as well as Yoru utility to get onto the site, but quickly running, making these rotations, and CNB able to find 2, but Evan trying to make this fight back work as much as possible. Unfortunately, the timing for Blitzen just doesn't work out super well, and Crisis is able to find 3, and the rotation coming through from Wuzu is a little bit too long-winded. And we're not able to stop that defuse, but does find 2 picks before Crisis finishes up with 4. CNB take the lead.
It's that start of the half. They got the first round. They build up towards what we call the anti-eco. They win it. And so they go to buy up these weapons. We've been seeing these turn into 1-1 scenarios a lot in the past 2 maps. So if Team CNB can win this second round, we'll see things come back into not only a 4-round win streak, but the usual pattern that we generally see overall in Valorant.
Yeah, but one-tappers, though they previously have been able to bring these 2 1v1 situations, they didn't go for that same aggressive buy-up this time around. They did decide to go ahead and concede a lot of that space, but it hasn't stopped Alphas from still being able to find a pick. Crisis does go for that trade back. Unfortunately, the timing of having that paranoia in hand does make it easy pickings for Blitzen to be able to find that one. And that is quite the piece of a weaponry on the ground. So that is going to be a retrieval for one-tappers. And that is one of the downsides to purchasing up one of those tools, is that it can just as easily go into your enemy's hands. And now it is just left up to Wuzu. Thankfully, the side of CNB is able to recover that and not have to worry about it too much.
I think there was a little bit of overconfidence there. Split, right, is the kind of map where you may not necessarily need to force up if you're going to go for an aggressive strategy, because it's so close quarters. That basic weapon of the Classic is super effective up close and personal, but CNB, very conscientious of that spacing, is not going to let things go so easily. You mentioned it, they let that tool fall out of their hands, and after realizing the error they made, immediately cut the costs.
And very nicely able to regather that, make sure that that stays in their hands, as that is quite expensive. And so the moment that it goes into your opponent's hands, not only is it added strength to your opponent, but it is also helping them and their economy going into further rounds. But now a pretty even buy for both of these teams, so I expect to see the field made equal here, as Crisis is going to try and stay hidden, try to keep the enemies guessing, using that teleport to remain as an unknown for as long as possible.
Ooh. Trailblazer lands, stunning Alphas temporarily, but more importantly, gathering information as we see them get lurked on, but now in the perspective of the A push players. Oh, never mind Yapper. Good for 2 out in mid, dwindling the numbers of the attackers. One-tappers, only 2 agents left on their side in this round.
We love to see the teamwork. Crisis was like, I can't fight this on my own, and quickly dips back into the help of the rest of the team. CNB together as 5 and really holding down that spike that is not in the hands of the attackers. And it looks like the remaining players in Wuzu and Evan are just trying to see if somebody overextends, see if somebody is going to try maybe get a little bit too aggressive, but CNB doing a really good job of being patient and holding back as much as possible until Rose says, I'm done waiting. I'm going to try and do a little bit of a fight here. And Wuzu is also going to be able to do a little double rope battle between those 2 players. So players are falling from CNB, but as you can see, that time has turned red at the top of the screen. And this is something that hasn't happened across our other games, but if the attacking side is not able to either eliminate all of the enemies or plant the spike within this time limit, the win goes to the defensive side. And so this is a place where we are seeing that Wuzu has opted to go for one of those saves, does get to hold on to that piece of weaponry going into this next round, but at the same time is going to be a little bit more stifled as far as general economy is going to go. It's one of those things where it is like a little bit of a risky play, potentially risky reward, but it ends up kind of equalizing itself if the rest of your team is going for a save in the next round anyway.
Right, we were talking about the sort of almost opportunity cost idea around choosing to save and your gun. I want to also mention that that was our first successful attempt at a save, in addition to our first win by time situation. It was attempted on Haven, but there was a hunt, and you pointed that one out as well, Becky.
I mean, you gotta. If your opponent's trying to save, you gotta go hunting. You gotta be like, that's not happening. We're shutting this down. I will not let my opponent's economy thrive.
That indeed. We see a slow push up mid. It is Rose who spots everyone first. And, you know, usually you do want to get information on your opponent, but not necessarily in that way. Staring down the barrel of 4 or 5 people is not the easiest thing to do as they take control of B Heaven. Team One Tappers swarm their way out onto the B site and take it into their own hands.
Yeah, Yapper now is the only one remaining, is debating going into the belly of the beast here, as Evan has been able to find 4 eliminations into this round, so is 1 more away from an ace. And this could be a place where we would see, again, Yapper go for a save. Already kind of in the lead for the side of C and B, has this tool in hand and could go ahead and say, it's not worth it. It's not worth my economy to go ahead and try to fight such a difficult battle in this 1v4 situation. But could also just wait and try to gather eliminations as time ticks down. But unfortunately is not able to do that. And One Tappers will find themselves a 7th round here.
Yeah, there's an important point to note, which is the idea of exit frags, which is kind of in the same vein of saving, where because the spike will eventually detonate and extract the Radiant from the map, the attackers have to evacuate that area. And so if you're a defender and you're opting to save, you might also position yourself in a place to find those fleeing attackers, to do a little bit of damage to the economy. The pendulum swings both ways.
All right, Rose going to start off once again with this Trailblazer, try to gather as much information as possible through those safe eyes of that dog, and having fun does go for this ultimate, is going to lock down that Yoru player. Alphas will go down. No dimensional drift to be used in this round, and the rotation as a result is going to come through for One Tappers, who've decided that too much utility has been used by C and B, and they don't really want to deal with committing to this side of the map.
Blitzen walking in the rest of Team One Tappers, creating space rather effectively, but it's Crisis who spots at least one. Evan not going to let them go down without a fight. Wuzu gathering space over in the tree room, kind of creating a pincer around the B site, successfully taking it, and there drops the Viper's Pit, which has been a key ultimate throughout this series.
Yeah, we've mostly been kind of highlighting it when it's on the defensive side, but this time on the attacking side, it does really allow for a difficult time for the defensive players to push in and go for that defuse, because so much vision is denied, and you can see it there. Rose thinks that she knows where that Viper is and just isn't able to make it happen because another player is lurking in this smoke as well. Unfortunately for Wuzu, does peek out, and Honorok is going to win the 1v2 with 5 HP and enough time to gather this defuse. So C&B will be the first team to find double digits here.
I thought it was Doom, so forgive me. I was not familiar with Anorak's game. Let's check it out one more time. Yeah.
A good replay to come through, and we can see CNB doing a great job of kind of locking down those few remaining players, and Wuzu getting punished for popping out of that Viper's Pit, and Evan trying to capitalize on the knowledge of information and the communication from the teammate. Honorok doing a great job of being able to hear those final footsteps that also allow for them to know where that final player in that 1v1 was remaining. CNB hold on to their lead here.
Out comes the Trailblazer to get information from the defensive side, knowing exactly where the attackers are. It stuns 2 and finds 2 more. That's enough information to call for backup from the rest of the defending side.
Yeah, especially considering that we also decided to pop the Dimensional Drift as well as the Empress for the side of One Tappers, making sure that a lot of pieces of utility are helping them get onto site. Alpha's behind enemy lines, and it looks like C and B sure know it, as Rose is able to quickly lock down that player. Oh, unfortunately for having fun though, Wuzu from downtown has the better range weaponry to take that fight. And Evan now is going to be the one to try and battle this back and keep CNB from getting any closer to match point.
That they do. Round number 19, and you're looking at the amount of ults invested into the prior round and seeing the results and its effects long term, where we likely won't be seeing them again anytime soon, maybe even for the rest of the map and therefore series, unless we make it overtime.
I mean, if there was a time where we were going to make it into overtime, I would anticipate it to be here. Though, the last time that CNB did take a game win, they did kind of have this same showing where we saw a very even first half of the map, and then they really just found their stride once they moved on to a different side. And maybe this is just going to be the same thing where they really find their footing on this defensive side and they just take over the game. As blind after blind comes through, really trying to get one-tappers on this attacking side as much of an advantage as possible. And so far, so good, though Alpha's only going to be able to trade 1-for-1 there for that space. But one-tappers, maybe they're the ones that have found their stride, as they're able to gather a lot of information and eliminations, leaving just 2 players of CNB remaining here.
Oh, Yapper walks up from the new box side, but Evan is not going to let them do any more damage, and then getting 1 elimination that closes out the round. Wuzu, good stuff there out of them. And I gotta tell you, Becky, this wall that Wuzu has been throwing cuts off the line of sight for the defenders in a multitude of angles. And even though Alphas is kind of getting picked off early, that teleport that they do into the back of B site is super effective in clearing it and also adding extra pressure to defenders to not know what to expect. So the defenders aren't trying to swing past that Viper wall either. They're just giving up all the space, and the spike has been getting planted for basically free.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting. Normally that wall wouldn't be considered the most optimal because it doesn't allow for you to block off those higher angles on that B-side heaven. But the way that they're also able to work with both Alphas and Evans blinds mean that they're able to just blind those players anyway, and they don't have to worry about those players in those close corners that wouldn't get blinded. And so it's actually a really good kind of tandem utility usage that's coming through from those players. Though they're trying to prove that they're not one-trick ponies. They have a lot more tricks up their sleeve. They can just kind of death ball through the middle of the map and still take down every single one of CNB's players, and they equalize us to a 10-10.
I think they strung together a good couple rounds in a row there, 3 to be precise. And because of that, because of all the eliminations that they're finding, they have built their way up to their ultimate orbs. Again, that is 1 from eliminations, 1 from being eliminated, 1 from planting the spike, defusing the spike, and getting the ultimate orb that are found across the map. 2 usually, some maps have others, but on split, 2 ultimate orbs to be claimed.
Yeah, and a lot, as you mentioned, of those ultimates are ready to go. Resurrections for both sides, so a lot of impact could be found. And now that we're getting down to the wire, it is really just trying to decide how each of these agents are using these ultimates. And it looks like one-tappers have decided to go back to this tried and true strategy. This Viper wall, as well as those blinds, able to just block off so much line of sight and just get this plant down simple and clean.
Use of the owl drone by Hum. You get a bit of information. Doesn't seem that they get too much. And Having Fun actually claims someone on the side of one-tappers in their ultimate. Hum responds in kind alongside Wuzu. Crisis, a natural disaster of their own, using the judge to its fullest extent and defusing the spike. I like the wall to make sure that there's no way that the defuse can be interrupted.
Okay. I was going to say, I was pretty sure that the snake bite actually still was going through, and it was. But the heal that came through from Honorok was healing at the same time that snake bite was dealing damage, and Crisis stayed alive long enough to get that defuse fully through.
So actually what's really interesting about the Viper snake bite is that unless it's paired with the orb, it will never eliminate someone at full health who defuses it. You still have enough time. So they have enough time to defuse it, and then they perish right after. Anyone that wants to do the math on that, but we're playing games right now.
I'll do the math later. Sometimes I do get done with a game and I'm like, I gotta run the numbers on this. Every once in a while. As Hunter's Furies does come out from the side of one tappers, a lot of space put onto the site, decides to go ahead and cancel it to be able to move a little bit more fully. And it is going to be Wuzu and Alphas once again, who just have been able to get so much space and hold a lot of these angles, keep watch of these rotations. But speaking of rotations, having fun is going to be a player able to make sure that something is still able to happen. Unfortunately, rotations really being watched by as many players as possible. Yapper goes ahead with that neural theft, is going to try and gather information about where those attackers are holding down this post plant. But it's a rough call, 1v4. Even if you have the information, you've also got to be able to make the shots, and it's just not going to come through. 11-11 in our 1-1 score line. If there's a chance to make a wish for whichever team you want to win, now is going to be the time to do so.
That indeed. Let's get a look at that last round as well. Having fun. Sees the barrel right there, which is what
a little bit of a peekaboo situation.
That indeed. An unfortunate timing for all those involved. There's no more seat. I paid for the whole thing.
You paid for it, but you're on the edge of it.
There's absolutely no reason to sit on the rest of it. This is insane. We're seeing 30s dropped by some of these players. Absolutely massive score lines. Everyone doing their part as well.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said for that last round that didn't go in CNB's way. A lot of it maybe coming down to not having the same level of utility to keep up with what one-tappers have been able to deploy, and the Resurrection also not able to be as impactful for CNB. And one-tappers still have it. They haven't even gone to use it. Rose coming from the flanking side. Unfortunately for Rose, the Ghost makes this so difficult to try and gather those eliminations, so it is going to be a flawless into match point for the side of one-tappers.
Let's take a look at that economy. It is not looking the best for Team CNB. That's why economy management throughout the game is so important, Becky. You were talking about it with the saves, and overall, if teams don't really take the time to make sure that they have enough cash by the end of the map, well, they might find themselves in a pinch like this. It is still absolutely possible for Team CNB to force the overtime with the ults that they have in their back pocket. They can get a lot of information, but when it comes down to the fights, they are a little bit on the weaker side.
All right, and speaking of that, the two ultimates that are ready for the side of one-tappers as they make their descent onto this B site are also extremely strong. Blinds coming out from both sides to try and stop the onslaught. Having fun does take down Evan, so that is going to be that Reyna taken off the board, but the Viper's Pit is in play. Tries to go for this isolation and maybe get rid of that Viper, but instead it's going to be Blitzen. There will be no Resurrection on this round. And so far, so good. CNB have been able to fight back despite the quick push that has come from one-tappers, and it will be enough to push us into overtime with a 12-12 in our map number 3.
This is neck and neck. Everyone pulling their weight. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Bassett Unified Esports Grand Finals for Valorant, and we couldn't have it any other way.
I mean, I was like looking at just the economy of that round as well as the ultimates that were available for one-tappers, and I was like, CNB, the writing might be on the wall here, but they're able to just change their defensive game plan, remain unpredictable, and one-tappers try to go for their tried and true, try to lock it all up. And CNB says, absolutely not. You shall not pass.
That's an old reference. I don't think
I'm hurt that you would say that.
I don't think the majority of the room will get the reference. It's okay, Becky.
Oh, okay. Wuzu playing a dangerous game. Double wall action here. Not only do we have the Viper wall, we also had the Sage barrier here to make sure that CNB are not going to be able to pop in, at least not easily.
That was a nice little molly to force having fun away from that corner and stay within a line of sight. Unfortunately, no one there to really play off of that forced positioning, but still clever usage of the molly nonetheless. And you see Team One Tappers making rotations across the map based on information that they already have. Unfortunately, the rotations don't come fast enough.
Yeah, huge here. Not prepared for how close Alphas is. Thankfully, Having Fun is going to get the better of that 1v1. And 5 players now remaining for CNB, strong onto this site, setting up their post plant. And with an isolation ready to go as well, is going to take Humberto into the Shadow Realm and find 3 in the round. It is all left up to Evan, who has been an extreme fragger for the side of One Tappers, but isn't able to in this round. And CNB are the first with a leg up in this overtime.
And we see the sides swap. They take this second in a row. They could claim their place as the champions.
I mean, that's what's on the line here. I mean, it's 1 point away for CNB from being able to take down the seniors.
But I can't imagine One Tappers want to make it that easy, right? They got 3 former champs on their team, right? It's Matthew, Evan, and Vin. They want to reclaim the throne.
Absolutely. And they showed that they were pretty strong on this attacking side, but it looks like they're switching it up. They're not going, once again, for that tried and true method that we kind of applauded them for, that looked so strong. They're going to kind of try and take a page out of CNB's book, try to be unpredictable, try and keep their opponents guessing. And so far, so good. This slow gameplay was something that we actually did see CNB do last round, and they said, hey, that was kind of a cool play. We'll try it out as well. Unfortunately, something that hasn't been tried has been an operator in the hands of the ISO, and it is going to be Having Fun getting a great pick that's going to stop those rotations. 2v2 now. But that spike has been dropped, and it is just Evan remaining for the side of One Tappers. Just Evan in between CNB and the trophy.
A successful claim on the spike that was dropped. It's open season over on the A site. They could go to plant.
Oh,
they're way too aware. They're not going to go into the plant before finding a pick of their own. And this is another cheeky little strat. Could it be a timing again? Aware that Having Fun has to rotate into them, waiting patiently, biding their time. Let's get look at that one.
Yeah, let's, please. I mean, that was a very different strategy, once again, from One Tappers. But, I mean, the amount of adaptations that we got to see immediately on the fly and the game sense coming out from those players, especially Evan in that round, was absolutely superb and holds this on longer. 13-13. Once again, folks, you have to win by 2 points in overtime to call yourselves the victor.
I thought my eyes were deceiving me. I had to lean in real close. Evan has dropped 41 eliminations.
41.
That is an insane stat line. With only being eliminated 14 times, that's almost a 4.0 KD ratio.
Yeah, absolutely huge, and remaining to just be that same impactful player. I mean, we all just saw the same clutch. We all know what's happening here. We'll just see if CNB is able to recover themselves, find themselves another attacking side win. And you can tell that our players are on the same level of just edge of their seat, because we went from some explosive, very quick gameplay for the first 3.5 maps, and all of a sudden everyone is shift walking, everyone is taking their time, everyone is patient. When it comes down to the wire, we're seeing both of these teams hold it all with such sanctity here as Wuzu tries to go for these 1v1s, takes out 2 before going to Honorok. Nice little crouch action there, and now it is just going to be 2 players from the side of One Tappers. The clutch has come through from Evan. It looks like Humberto thinking about going for that owl drone, but is just going to be a way for Evan to go for that trade back and forth. The tap does come through, and Evan's trying to watch all those angles, but the crossfire is going to be enough. Honorok finds that final elimination. CNB get themselves a leg up once again.
What a timing there. Immediately as the fight breaks out with Evan and another, Anorak is there around the corner.
It's amazing to me when teams are like, yeah, our communication could use some work, and then you see them get into an overtime situation and all of a sudden the communication comes online. It's like, this is what you just need to highlight. This is what needs to be something that you watch back after this tournament. Whatever communication is happening here when it matters most, that's what you need to be referring back to and be using across every other facet of the game.
This is literal mind reading coming out from each other's teammates, being able to synchronize so perfectly. You're right, Becky. Things have slowed down a lot. I mean, as someone who competes myself, I can tell you that time has slowed down in their minds. Each second feels like 1,000 years. And they're just looking to find any opportunity at hope. Wuzu with the first pick and turning around. Did they know that they were spotted? Who knows? They still get both eliminations.
Yeah, and that rotation from the defensive side did move everyone off of this B site, so it's going to be a full retake from those 3 remaining C and B players to try and make this work as much as they possibly can as one tappers, 5 strong and spike planted. Ooh, and the Viper's Pit as well. Not something you see all too often in overtime, as those ultimate points do reset in every single round. So you typically need to get 3 eliminations before you're able to even use an ultimate in a round. So that speaks to the strength that Wuzu has already shown in this round.
They took the 2 eliminations and planted the spike, giving them that opportunity. And it might just very well pay off. As Alphas is good for 2. Yapper all alone, and with 30 HP, they walk into the ult. They'll decay to 1.
Oh!
But maybe 1 is all they need.
Might be all they need, but with that spike ticking as fast as it is, you know that there's just no time left, and we go deeper and deeper into this overtime at 14-14. I love seeing that other people are just as tense and on the edge of their seats as we are.
Absolutely. I can't wait to count up the total eliminations from both teams, because this has been one of the most exciting matches that I've ever had the privilege of casting.
It is an exciting one at that. As we mentioned, 14-14, you have to win by 2. So we reset once again, and C and B have reigned on the attacking side, but so have one-tappers every time it's switched back into their clutches. But this time around, not going for the safe gameplay, having fun is on the prowl here.
Ooh, look at that. Diligence in clearing every single corner. It doesn't matter how long the day has been, they're going to keep up with the same quality.
Yeah, speaking of corners, I was a little worried for having fun there, but is able to quickly rebuttal there and take out Wuzu. Having fun, tries to isolate this final 1v1, but Humberto is able to get the better of that. Unfortunately, when you're stuck in the Shadow Realm, you are pretty able... Your character is just like a little piece of mist on the ground, and if you're the only one remaining, the enemies can certainly go and swarm to that spot that is your singular spot of mist on the ground and find you once you come out of the Shadow Realm.
Yeah, you described it earlier as a minigame, and that's exactly the way to describe it. Because, yeah, you can win the 1v1, but what happens afterwards when you come back to reality, right?
All right, a very big change of pace coming out from C and B. They're showing that they can still play the aggressive game despite the amount of anxiety holding over them in this moment. Having fun first to catch a pick here once again, but it's going to be Evan going for that 1v1 trade. 4-4 to both of these teams. A lot of weight on one tapper's shoulders once again, as they have to get this round to stay in the match and try to get the trophy once again.
Using the cage to cut the line of sight, but Crisis overpicking there. Yapper wants to come and even the odds, and sure, they're good for 1, but they fall as well.
Yeah, a little bit of a spooky situation. Not always your favorite moment when you peek into 4 players of the enemy team. Thankfully, though, was able to get 1, as you mentioned, and it is going to be a quick rotation over towards the A side of the map for the attacking side. And the 2 remaining defensive players are going to try and just gather as much information from listening to footsteps as they possibly can, as Blitzen blitzes, if you will, onto site to get the spike planted.
I like the way that Team C and B stay together, but 1 is picked off without an instant trade. In fact, it is Evan who goes for an ace in overtime to keep Team One Tappers in this series.
In this series, and it is just an attacker's game between all of these players. They are coming in strong every time their side is red. And we're getting to see it just time and time. 15-15. We're still in it, folks. And it still could be anybody's game. I think it really is going to end up coming down to whoever can finally get a win on the defensive side.
Absolutely. Both teams are having a lot of success on attack. It really comes down to who's going to defend better. Because I think both sides have been getting really antsy.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a spooky 1v1 there between Having Fun and Evan, but both of those top-fragging players have fallen here, as we got to see unfortunate Lear that was not able to do the blinding that it needed to do. And now we see these players go back to the quiet gameplay. I mean, we definitely are seeing Having Fun and Evan both be the two very loud players. And so now that both of them are off the map, we're back to this quiet. But hey, this could be the bursting of the dam that needed to happen here. The defensive side taking control once again, as it is left just to one player from CNB. And One Tapper is the first to find the defensive win. And will that be enough for them to win at 17-15 here and get that trophy once again?
This is quadruple overtime, ladies and gentlemen. If they don't get it here, we're moving to the 5th iteration of OT. And with each OT, Evan gets closer to 50 kills.
Is so close at 48. It is quite an exciting game for even these players, I'm sure, as a result of this. All right, a reset fully once again. And this is one of those places CNB previously has gone with an operator. Is that something that you're worried about running into if you're on the attacking side of One Tappers, or are you kind of just hoping that it will be equalized once again?
You know, they're running the Sova, so you anticipate for them to kind of throw out the Owl Drone and that Recon Bolt, which should give pretty stable information. That being said, you can't really anticipate the way that Having Fun plays. They're so aggressive in the most unexpected manner. So good at isolating angles as well, kind of demonstrating a lot of technical knowledge over the game.
Oh, unfortunately for Umberto, that... Oh, the flash does come through. Having Fun not anticipating that the teleport was the follow-up to that flash as well. And an explosive push onto site. Crisis is going to try and spam through these spots as much as possible. But all of a sudden, we are left just up to Yapper, who thankfully is able to catch Wuzu unawares. 1v2 situation we've seen. These clutches come through, and if there's a time for Yapper to make this clutch, it is now, as CNB are on their last length. Dimensional Drift comes through. We locate where Yapper is, goes for the push in, and Alphas with 4 finds the dub after 17-15. We have reigning champions in the hands of One Tappers.
What a way to end this series. After going into quadruple overtime, 17-15, like you said, Becky, coming back in to reclaim their title.
I love that we're barely out of this match and we already have our players going to congratulate one another, to talk each other up. What an insane match that we just watched. Already going to game 3 is a treat, but going into quadruple overtime is absolutely huge. So I just want to say congratulations to Team One Tappers. I've been Becky Bear. This has been Ashcon. Send us off, Ashcon.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an awesome night of Valorant. Thank you to those of you watching at home, our online audience. We'll be closing out for the night, and remember to follow or subscribe to stay tuned for everything happening as these teams progress to further competitions. Good night.
Well, you guys were in for a real treat, huh? You thought this was going to be...